This request came in saying, I struggle with raising and lowering intensity. Can you help? I think I can help with that one. Usually when people think of color, they think in terms of hue. So they'll see a color that's a lower intensity color, but they'll call it by a hue name or by some kind of generic name, like brown, for example, or tan, or even gold. Well, all those are generic names, but they don't tell you anything about the intensity of the color. The intensity of the color is just one part. All color has three parts. All color functions the same way. You look at a single color, it has a hue, it has a value, and it has an intensity. And when you're controlling intensity, what you're doing is you're either lowering or raising the saturation of the hue, meaning the amount of color that's in that hue. A highly saturated hue then is one whose intensity is not lower, and a lower saturated hue has a little bit of its complement in it. So one way we go about desaturating color or lowering its intensity, people call intensity chroma, same thing. It's just a matter of nomenclature. And you'll often just have it referred to as saturation. Either way, all those things refer to the same thing. How much of the hue, the actual hue of the color, is in the color, or to what degree has it been neutralized. All right, so there's a little skill you can use. There are two skills, in fact, that you can use to control your intensity, whether you want to make it more saturated or less saturated. You can use any set of colors on the color wheel. A traditional color wheel is what I prefer because I think the traditional color wheel is closer to what pigment actually does. So, any colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel are complements, and they will neutralize the intensity or neutralize the saturation when mixed together. But the problem is a lot of people forget one little step when they're trying to mix them together. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, first of all, here is an orange. And it's an orange that leans, well, let's just call it orange. And here is a blue. All right, blue and orange are complements. They're opposite each other on the color wheel. And when you have an orange that's not leaning towards yellow, and you mix it with an ultramarine blue, then you're going to get a neutralization. Now, you'll get a neutralization if the orange leans towards yellow-orange, but it'll also lean a little bit more towards green because it has more yellow in it than the orange does. And likewise, you can get a neutralization if you use red-orange, but it will lean a little bit towards violet because it has more red in it. So, when you're first learning to control the intensity of color, just stick to colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel, and you'll find how easy that works. So I'm going to take the color wheel away. I'm going to be using blue and orange. You can use any set of complements for this exercise. All right, so let me show you something. This color is a high intensity orange. As it comes out of the tube, it's a fully saturated, relatively fully saturated orange. So let's not get technical now. It's about as saturated orange as you're going to find in any tube. So we'll start with that. Now, let me show you a color that comes out of the tube that's also an orange, but it's not fully saturated. We have burnt sienna. Burnt sienna is an orange. Maybe some burnt siennas might lean a little bit more towards red. Some might lean a little more towards yellow, but it is basically an orange that is desaturated, somewhat desaturated, or of a lower intensity than this. Another color we have we have several that come out of the tube that are desaturated. One is called quinacridone burnt orange. Another is called, that Rembrandt makes, is Rembrandt transparent oxide red. It calls itself red, although it does lean more towards orange. Now, here is the Rembrandt transparent oxide red at the same value as, or similar value range as this orange. And that's important. If I don't have transparent oxide red, I want to get transparent oxide red. Let me show you how I'll do that. It's a desaturated orange, or some folks will say desaturated red orange, still in the same range. So first of all, I start with the value of the orange that I want. And let's say the orange has come straight out of the tube at this value. If I add a dark blue to that, let me show you what happens. If I take a dark blue, this is ultramarine blue as it comes straight out of the tube, and if I put ultramarine blue in that orange, I will desaturate it, but I'll do something else too. I will change its value. Let me show you that. Here we go right here. You see how much darker? Well, let's put it right here. See how much darker that is? And that's not the value I want. So you see, you're working with value while you're working with desaturating, or while you're working with controlling intensity, you're also working with value. So it works better if you value correct before you add the darker color in. In this case, if this is the value we want, it works better if we desaturate gradually, but first we value correct. And what that means is that we change the value of that ultramarine blue to a value in the same value range as this orange. Now I have it mixed right here. This is the ultramarine blue mixed with white, just mixed with white. So I will just go into another section of the orange right here and pull those two together and show you by gradually pulling the orange into the blue, I can get this saturation, or very, very close. And here it is right here. Wait just a minute. Got two, not quite enough. Not quite enough. And I might not have the value quite light enough, the value of the blue. So let's see. All right, you see that's very close. Now, if I add just a tiny bit more of the white, not much. Let's pull some white down here. If I add just a tiny bit more of the white to this, here we go. Let's put it right here. So you can see I made that color. Leans a little bit redder. Well, if I wanted exact, then I could add a little bit red to it. It would tell me that that this orange has a little bit, or needs a little bit more red in order to be fully neutralized by the ultramarine blue. But usually when we're working, this sort of thing is close enough. It might be just a matter of adding a tiny bit more of the orange to it. Let's see. So you see little bits at a time. Let's put this right here. There we go. There we go. It was more of the orange, a little bit more of that white in it. It was more of the orange that we needed rather than more of the red. And there we go. So right on top of it, you can't tell the difference. Now let me show you how you can gradually, usually when you're trying to change the intensity of something, of a color, you're trying to change the intensity, you might get it too neutral. There are degrees of saturation. So I want to show you that now. And this is a good practice exercise for you that will enable you to develop the skill. This is a skill. There's no magic to it. It's a skill. And this will enable you to develop the skill of desaturating color. So I can start with, the fully saturated middle value orange. Fully saturated names the intensity. Middle value names the value. Orange names the hue. We have a chord there, not a note. Alright, so here's the fully saturated. Now what I'm going to do is gradually desaturate it as I move in this direction right here. Gradually desaturate it pretty much in this same value range. So I will just gradually, I will load this brush again just with the saturated orange. I'll move into the middle value. Remember I said the value is middle. So I need that value to desaturate it at the same value. So I'll move into the middle value of the ultramarine blue and add just a little bit. Not much, just a little bit. I just wanted one, I want desaturated just 1 degree. And here it is right here. You see that? Well, in fact, I would like that just a little bit less saturated. A little bit less saturated than that. Now, this is the kind of thing that you'll see in the fall colors. If this is the first time you're watching this video, and if you're in areas where it's a fall season, you see the fall colors. They're not fully saturated like this. They're all desaturated, pretty much all desaturated to a certain degree. So, and we could actually, in fact, have it less desaturated than that by adding this bit right here. There we go. So you see, I have right here 2 degrees of saturation. Then I can gradually, if I want to continue on the desaturation of the orange, I need it more desaturated than I see it, or a lower intensity is another way of saying it. A lower chroma is another way of saying it. Here it is right here. A little bit more of the blue in it. And there we go. That's another degree of lowering the intensity. And we can lower it a little bit more gradually, so that you see the value stays the same. It's the same hue. It's still orange, but it's a lower intensity orange. So folks will begin to call that other things like, I don't know, what, Buster Brown brown? I don't know. All right, now here it is, desaturated another degree. You see, it's getting closer now to what we have right up here. Getting closer to what the transparent oxide red gives us. You might say, why not just start with the transparent oxide red? Well, you could if that's the saturation you want. But suppose it's not. Suppose you want it more saturated than transparent oxide red is. Then this is the way to go. You can go either way. The viewer is not going to know the difference. The viewer is not going to know what colors you mix to get the results you got. It's up to you to make those mixtures, and the viewer sees the impression, the result of what you've got. So I'm gradually adding a little bit more blue to it. All right, there we go. There's another. That's about a ½ degree. Here it is, a little bit more desaturated. And what I would like to do right here in front of you is to continue to desaturate that orange until it loses its hue altogether. It's losing its hue. It's still orange, but it's losing its hue. And when you do exercises like this, you will learn to, when you see that color, you will often see it in nature. You might see it rocks in the creek. You might see it on the beach. You might see it almost anywhere. You will learn to read that as orange. That's desaturated. All right, going to continue to desaturate, and you can see all I'm doing by adding this blue is taking away the orange. Or you could say, then we use the term neutralize. So we do that right here. You see, it's getting grayer and more neutral. And I think it's better to use the word neutral than gray, because gray implies a certain registration. But if you're saying neutral, more and more neutral, that tells you that you're getting rid of the hue. That's what neutral means. So continue to pull this down until all the hue goes away. And let's see, can I do that? Can I get all the hue out before I reach the end of my canvas over there? See if I can. I just pull a little bit of blue at a time at this same value level, and here we go. Oh, it's not all gone yet. All right, I can still see some orange in it. Now, if I were seeing that color isolated, just like that, it's not quite so obvious. That means so much of the orange is gone that it may be a little difficult to read that as orange anymore. Now you might really begin to call it a warm gray, which is perfectly fine. So let's just continue. We'll start going down the hill now. There we go. That's a little bit more neutral. And it will reach a point where you will see neither blue nor orange in that color. We're just about to reach that right now. Now, the neat thing about this is that if you continue, it begins to turn blue. It begins to turn low intensity blue, and the more blue you add to it, then the more intense that blue gets. All right, so here we go. That's beginning to almost feel blue. So you can see that progression there. That is a gradation of intensity that goes from the high saturation of orange to the lowest saturation of orange, where orange disappears. We can't see orange anymore. Now, I have also been asked, how can you raise the intensity of a color that's already desaturated? So that one is sort of obvious if you think about it. Once again, the values need to be the same. The values of the two colors you use need to be the same. But this time, what we'll be doing is using the transparent oxide red. I'm going to be using the same value here of the transparent oxide red. We could go to the dark as it comes straight out of the tube, but it'd be hard to see because it is so dark. Or we could use the light version. But I'm going to stick to that same middle value all the way through this little exercise. So if I want to desaturate the transparent oxide red, this is mixed with white. If I want to desaturate, I would add a little bit of ultramarine blue into it. And you see what happens there? A little bit of ultramarine blue desaturates it. Okay, where does that belong? It belongs somewhere over here. Let's just put it right here. That desaturates it. But what if I want it more saturated? That's usually the question. What if you want to raise the saturation of that? Well, it's kind of simple. I bet you know the answer already. You add the saturated color into it, and we'll do that now. So I load the brush with the transparent oxide red plus white, go to the same value right here, same value of the saturated orange, and I can raise the saturation. There it is right there. You see it compared. You can see the saturation raised. Now, here's the thing about it. It's like taking salt out of food. You can't do it. You can't, if you can only raise the saturation of color that comes out of the tube desaturated or in any degree desaturated. You can only raise that saturation to a degree. But if it's fully saturated, why not just go to the one that's fully saturated out of the tube? So you can see, I'll just do one more of those where I add a little bit more of that orange into it and show you here. See, but it's orange. It's still the orange, but see, it's not as saturated. You see, it's slightly desaturated when you put these two together. So I think if you will try that exercise, not only try it with the blue and the orange, but find any other set of complements on the color wheel and start out with them, testing them to be sure that they are really going to neutralize each other without one leaning towards another color. But remember to value correct first. And if you do just an incremental scale like this where you keep the value the same, that's very important. Don't let it get any darker or any lighter, but keep the value pretty much the same all the way across, and then take it to the point where it loses all its hue. I think if you will take yourself through some exercises like that, you'll discover all of a sudden the light bulb goes on about how to desaturate or how to raise and lower intensity. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.